to go about mitigation of climate change in my organization, and then this is how I will achieve it. And then you go ahead to achieve it and submit a report to that effect. The report will be submitted to state directors of the National Council on Climate Change. Failure to comply, you might be liable on conviction to a fine of 1 million naira or 1 year imprisonment. Now, I'm thinking that this will definitely be a case of, the doctrine of lifting the veil, because you cannot convict a private entity, so to say. So if you are a corporation, for instance, you can't take, let's say like Nest Oil Company, for instance, is an oil company. If they are the violators, they cannot be imprisoned. They might be fined. So I'm seeing a situation whereby it's a case of lifting the veil and then getting directors who are manning such organization responsible for their failure to comply with these provisions. So I'm not going to talk about criticize the obligations of private entities, and I will start with the good side. Of course, the provision is fantastic because it sort of uses a bottom-up approach, which is what is prevalent in the international climate change regime. So under the Paris climate change regime, you have a similar arrangement whereby private member states come up with what they want to do per time. They just say, this is what we want to do with respect to climate change mitigation and adaptation, and then they submit it so that you can only hold them responsible with respect with what they want to do. I mean, such approach is also good in the sense that people adopt what they are capable. So they adopt based on their capacity, not because it was imposed on them. So for instance, Nigeria, our NDC is a reflection of our capacity. There are a lot of provisions there, which is contingent on support. And there are ones we are like, you know what, we are going to do this to mitigate climate change. There are others we know we cannot do as a country. So we sort of peg it on the availability of funding from the financial mechanisms of the body. So you have a similar approach where private entities would on their own elect to say, oh, this is what we want to do to reduce carbon in our corporation or our body. That is really fantastic. And I find that effective to the extent that other things are also in place. Like I did also say, the issue of capacity comes in because major organizations would be in a position to do more. Major emitters, like all these petroleum companies, they will be in a position to do more. Whereas minor companies like off-grid renewable electricity companies, solar electricity companies, they would adopt measures based on their little contribution to climate change, if any, and then they will adopt measures based on their small capacity. Coming down to the issue of what are the flaws of these provisions, I will first of all start with climate illiteracy. In Nigeria, a lot of people are not even aware that we have a problem called climate change. People are not aware of it. And of course, it's not also distinct from the general illiteracy problem in the country, because I think the literacy rate in Nigeria was pegged at about 40-something%. That is if I'm even right. So you have a lot of, a high level of illiteracy. People are not aware of climate change. And even if they are aware, they are not really aware to the extent of participating effectively. I find that it's going to affect this particular provision, as a lot of organizations may not even have the capacity to even understand what is being spoken about. And then you also have climate organizations in Nigeria are not, a lot of organizations in Nigeria are not even aware of the existence of the Climate Change Act. They don't know anything about it. As I'm talking, I'm sure that even people in this forum might not even be aware that you have obligations of private entities under the Act, and that one could even be criminally liable for failure to comply with it. People are not aware of it. So as such, I discovered that these provisions will have very limited influence to the extent that this climate literacy is allowed to thrive. And another thing is limited environmental experts. The preparation of carbon reduction measures by a company and the preparation of the annual report requires a level of expertise. It's not even every environmental expert that can do that. So how many organizations of 50 employees and above have the capacity, to be able to draw up an effective carbon mitigation measure? How many people could even draw up an annual report measuring their progress? So those are the sort of a barrier or problem I see with respect to this provision. And another thing is there is no benchmark for adopting the carbon reduction plan. At least if you are headed somewhere, you ought to know where you were before. If you are adopting a carbon emission reduction plan, you need to know as an organization where you are to be able to adopt one effectively, to say, you know what, we are going to reduce our carbon emission. So holistically, we don't have that in Nigeria. Most organizations are not even aware whether they are emitting carbon or not. And in one way or the other, we are all carbon emitters. That is the reality. So that is, and then adequate measures are not yet in place from the point of the regulator to implement this act. For instance, we do not have the state offices of the NCC as I'm talking now. We don't have, I stay in Ekiti State mostly. Sometimes I'm also in Lagos. In Ekiti State, we do not have the office of the National Council on Climate Change. So who are we going to report to if as an organization we decide to comply with this act? So adequate measures are not in place. I'm not also aware whether we have zonal director. I do know that the body has been inaugurated, but measures are still to be put in place to ensure the success of this act. So moving forward, what are the recommendations? I'm going to sort of, start first of all by taking it one after the other. There should be climate education. Perhaps what should be done is to incorporate climate change even as a course from the primary level. It's not out of place to begin to introduce units to sensitize people generally about climate change. And even having environmental studies in secondary school is not out of place, because this is a serious issue and it affects every sector. Every sector in Nigeria is affected by climate change, one way or the other. So there is the need for climate education and climate sensitization, and all hands should be on deck. It shouldn't just be government doing it. Non-governmental organizations should also see to it that they are involved. And of course, I'm going to really call on the National Council on Climate Change to oversee it. Since they are the ones setting up the National Action Plan on Climate Change, it should be part of it. There should be intentional climate education in Nigeria. And it should be done vigorously, because we don't even have all the time to do it. And additionally, there should be specific sensitization on issues incidental to the success of the act. An average person is not even aware of, the fact that we have a climate change act. People are not aware that we have a council that is responsible for it. Recently, I tried going online to see whether I would even get information on the National Council on Climate Change. I couldn't. I had to get some from some organization where I belong. The information is not even out there. The action plan is not even out there. It's not readily available for the public to access. Those are issues that the government must sit up and see to it that people are aware of this act, are aware of what needs to be done for the act to be a huge success. And I feel that private entities should be involved. Under the Paris Climate Change Agreement, which is the umbrella for all this, we have what we call a non-state actors zone. The non-state actors zone sort of brings together private entities to lend a voice to the entire international climate change process. So we have to have that in Nigeria, a situation whereby private entities would also be involved in making the action plan. They will be involved in things that has to do with policy making and regulation in the sector. That way, they are in tune with what is involved. They could also lend a voice to what can work and what cannot work, so that we do not go about making laws that are a failure from the word go. The next thing I am also recommending is that the carbon emission target must be aided and must be informed. The National Council on Climate Change have a lot of work on their hands. They have to sit up and ensure that private entities do the right thing by aiding them. So there must be centers or bodies or even places where people can go to and they get help on how to prepare their carbon emission reduction plan. And there should be training as well. Institutions should have access to having key personnel there being trained to be able to rise up to the occasion, to fit into the role of sustainability officer. Otherwise, it will have a situation whereby it will be a tick box approach. People will just copy what other organizations have, submit it, and at the end of the day, fake that they have implemented it. So the NCC has a lot of work to do. And I'm also thinking that they should call on non-governmental organizations to help them. We have a lot of NGOs everywhere. So they might think of using the NGOs to be able to achieve all this. Now, I also mentioned that we don't have the measuring of the base carbon emission of various organizations. I think that it should be done nationwide. So in the same way we have the nationals, we are going to have, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. In the same way that we are going to have the national census, so we should have something like a national carbon emission measuring in Nigeria. Private entities should be measured to know this is where we are as a country as per our carbon emission. That's where people can adopt carbon emission reduction from an informed perspective, not just manufacturing figures without actually knowing the reality on ground. In conclusion, I just want to say that climate change is upon all of us. We shouldn't feign ignorance or say it doesn't bug me. It bugs everybody because we are affected. If flooding is not contained, if drought is not contained, it's going to affect our food security. And then it will affect everyone because by the time the price of staple foods are skyrocketing, everybody will be affected. By the time we have extreme weather conditions, which is basically destroying properties and lives, everybody will be affected. So I am calling on everyone who is listening to me to, take the word to everybody that we have this act and the duty is on all of us, whether public or private entity, to do our bit in order to make it a huge success. Thank you so much, and thank you once more for having me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chinua Hole.
Thank you, ma'am.
Very insightful session on this climate change acts. And I want to say you have really done a great justice on this. And let me just start from where you stopped, that we need to call, it's for everybody and it's hurts everybody. And that is why this climate change, it needs serious and urgent and the immediate action of all, because we are all part of the non-state, the actors in this, which include the private entities, the different organizations, the different ministries, and so on. And that is why we need this action to start immediately. The effect is so much on us and it's cut across different locations and different sectors. And I want to say the developed countries already have actually keyed into this. But the point is, what are we developing countries? What are we actually doing in this? The developed UN has already come up with to make sure that every developing countries actually sign the acts. And this thing has been signed. Where is it being kept? Are the governments really doing what they are supposed to do? That should be the part of questions we need to ask ourselves. If the governments are actually not doing what they are supposed to do, the non-state actors, what are we doing on this? So I want to say you have really done a great justice by giving us different insights on this topic, especially on the objective, on getting fund, on the literacy, getting people enlightened, and so many that you have really introduced us to. So the floor is open for contributions. If you're having contributions or you have questions to ask our facilitator, she's still here with us. Kindly raise your virtual hand so that you can be called upon. And I believe we should have a lot of questions based on what she has actually put us through this morning. So one of us, Maruf Sonri.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Please go ahead with your question. Good morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Ngozi. That was a very nice presentation. I was wondering, you made mention of a fund. How do we assess such a fund?
Oh,
okay.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Okay. The Climate Change Fund is already provided for under the Climate Change Act. So typically what they are going to do is to call for developers, or they will call for interest. They are going to publish a call for interest and then you respond. It's just the way most of these funds, they do it, like the rural electrification fund, they advertise maybe on their website and relevant platforms, and then you get to apply. So I'm sensing, because the act came into place 2021 and then the council was just inaugurated towards the end of 2021, that they are still putting modalities in place, and that in due time they are going to, advertise or call for interest, and then people can apply and they will select projects that they will fund. At the same time also, there is nothing stopping a person who has a project from writing to them directly for collaboration. So you could actually write to the council and say, this is a project that I have. Can we come together as partners? And that might be you bringing out maybe like concessionary funding, saying that this is what I have. Can you people come in to do so and so for me? And I'm quite sure that they will be optimistic or enthused about such projects if you approach them. Thank you.
So I hope Maruf Sonri is satisfied with that response.
Yes, thank you very much. I am. Thanks.
All right. You can please lower your hand. So Joy Folarunsho is raising her hand. Please, over to you.
Hello.
Okay.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ngozi, for that presentation. It was quite explicit and interesting. But a very salient point under the Act is the issue of infrastructural or adaptive capacity. Personally, in Nigeria, I believe we are not responsible for the effects of climate change that we face. Most of what we encounter or go through is because we either lack the adaptive capacity or they are in poor states. Let me put it like that. And these adaptive capacities, they spread from the individual level to the household level, to the communities, to the whole nation at large. So I was just thinking, instead of propagating the gospel of the Climate Change Act, why can't we in Nigeria just kind of promote the establishment of adaptive capacities? Maybe like individuals now, an adaptive capacity is the knowledge they have about climate change. At household level, maybe you can have your drainage constructed. It's an adaptive capacity. Most of what we have in Nigeria, they are either not in a good state or they are not present at all. So I feel we are not really the producers of the greenhouse gases. Definitely, that one is very obvious. We really don't have the number of industries like those in the developed countries, just that these greenhouse gases cannot be restricted in the atmosphere. They spread everywhere, and so we face the consequence also. So I just feel that the need for proper adaptive capacities should be well emphasized, rather than just telling people that there's an act and they should go by whatever is in the act. For instance, now let's say an organization that have like 50 people, like the Climate Change Act stipulated. Let's say that organization exists. Why can't they put in structures around them that will impact their location and even the community, like their area of how will I explain it now? Where they will affect. Like, why can't you put in structures that will prevent flooding, for instance? Why can't we construct drainages, clear drainages and all that? So in Nigeria, I think that's what we should be doing more, instead of just propagating the gospel of the Climate Change Act. Anyway, that's my own personal opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm really grateful for that, because it shows that people are listening, and I'm also happy that people are also really thinking by way of what can we do as a country to see to it that we are also part of what is being spoken about. But quite frankly, when people say, oh, Nigeria, we are not emitting all that, I mean, in comparison to other people, we don't emit as much. But the reality is every country, they are emitting, but the level differs. And that is why in international law, you have the concept of common but differentiated responsibility. So you have countries of the world assuming responsibility for climate change, even in their measures, and also the level of support they provide based on their history of emission. So developed countries have more responsibilities because they are the ones now providing funding for us, the developing countries, funding that we assess to enable us adapt to climate change and also mitigate. So they are doing more than we are doing to ensure that this issue of climate change is addressed. Then coming to the issue of mitigation and adaptation, if we turn a blind eye to our emission or mitigation, then definitely it means that the problem will continue to persevere. So every country have a role to play. It doesn't matter whether you emitted more or you emitted less. Otherwise, if a country is saying that, oh no, we are not going to participate because we are not even the emitters, then the thing is, the effect also, we are not spared from it. So it is in our best interest to show commitment towards mitigation as well. And then again, for most of these funds that you have in place, and even for these developed countries, they also want to look at willingness to participate in the race of mitigation. So if you are the country that, oh, in your NDC, you are not saying anything, you are just saying, you know what, give me funds, I will just adapt to climate change, I'm not going to contribute, it's still going to weigh on how much of those funds you will be able to access. And quite frankly, we have a lot of funds. Nigeria is not even assessing those funds as we should. And that is also because of the climate illiteracy. So that is why the Act is also emphasizing carbon mitigation at the lower level. Now, I agree with you that perhaps we should also look at saying adaptation at the lower level. But I understand why our government wouldn't want to say that, because adaptation costs quite a lot. So I would rather that government and public entities play a greater role in adaptation by supporting communities, you know, helping them, partnering with them, providing funds where necessary to enable them adapt to climate change, providing smart agricultural technologies and equipment. But I do agree with you also that perhaps we should look into saying, oh, you know what, private entities should come up with adaptive measures in addition to carbon reduction emission plan. So I hope I've been able to shed light on your comments.
Hello, Joy Folorusho. Are you satisfied with that response?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for the question. So we still have one hand up. Agatha, please come up with your question.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, Dr. Ngozi, for the presentation. So my question is in the aspect of having the non-stakeholders participation in the implementation plan. And we know for us to be able to really work into the work in the climate space, there's a lot of funding that are involved, as you even mentioned, that even here in Nigeria, there are kind of issues in accessing those funds. In as much as our contribution to emission is not like the same level with the developed country, but at some point we have some level of emission. So how, in our own capacity, have we been able to try to reduce that emission by way of monitoring and evaluating those industries that we have around us, to put a kind of a strict check on them, to be able to, for them to assess the level of emission they have in the environment. Secondly, for non-stakeholders, individuals and private sectors involved, how do we, on our way, kind of reduce our carbon print as a household? What are the efforts that are being made? And if governments are not actually coming forth in their own responsibility, what responsibility do we have for corporate owners by way of social responsibility in the aspect of climate change? What duties can the country put in place? Okay, if you are a corporate body, this and this and this you can do in the area of climate change to complement the efforts of the government activities. Then towards the Niger Delta, we have a lot of gas flaring, and is a whole lot of concern there. What are the things that this act is covering in that particular area to be able to address the level of emission? Thank you.
Okay, can I answer now?
Yes, ma, you can.
If I get what you are saying, you are asking. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma, I can hear you.
Yes,
Okay. You were asking what measures are we putting in place to hold corporations responsible for climate action? Is that your question?
Yeah, the level of emission, yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, what the law has done is there. You know, there is an obligation on them, if your employee is 50 and above, to adopt carbon emission reduction measures. But like I said, that obligation is not sufficient. It should be more like a partnership between such corporation or private entities and the government. Government should look into what they are doing to even guide them. Otherwise, it will be more like a tick box approach. I could merely go and adopt what another corporation submitted to quickly comply with the law, and then, you know, not even bother myself achieving it. What I would just do is to also get a report, you know, falsify it, submit it, and there it goes. So there needs to be adequate measures to ensure that the ones prepared are adequate and efficient, in line with the capacity of the organization, and to also ensure that it's really being implemented as it should be. So the law has provided for it. The duty now is the implementation, and I did make some key recommendations. And then I just want to say this sort of came into my mind as you asked the question, that non-governmental organization could also set up like a monitoring group. For instance, in the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, Lagos State, at some point, some non-organization came together when the act was enacted, and they formed what they call a monitoring group. a group that sort of monitored access to justice as it relates to that act. So it would also be helpful if we have non-governmental organizations forming a monitoring group to ensure that private entities are also doing their bit. And if they are not doing it, to sort of call upon them. I've seen a lot of organizations like STERAP, Institute and Action, taking government to court over some provisions of the law. So we could also have that. We could also have non-governmental organizations just watching over how this act is being implemented, and also reporting to the public, reporting to the international community, using the press as a force to sort of garner compliance to the provisions of the act, especially as it relates to cooperation, especially oil companies, because they are also like the major defaulters, and most of them are like, you know, the child that you cannot beat. They basically hide under their alliance with government, and then, you know, you cannot touch them. So we need non-governmental organizations to step up to the occasion and also monitor the implementation of this act. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for that explanation. Something is wrong somewhere. It's either the organizations are there, they don't want to implement the act, and nobody's actually following up to ensure that the act is being implemented. So I hope the government and the law enforcement agents will be able to do something on this, while other non-state actors take action on this as well. So we have Nelson Bassey, and please come up with your question. Over to you. Nelson Bassey. Okay, I don't think it's there. So let's over to Maruf Sani.
Thank you very much, the moderator. So something just came to my mind now. You know, I understand the idea around the low carbon innovation development pathways. That is something Nigeria should imbibe. But at the same time, when you look at where our resources or the revenue is actually coming from, over 89% of our revenue is coming from crude oil. So telling Nigeria now to step down that so that they could, you know, go to low carbon innovation might be actually a big problem for them. That's one. Number two is also that when you look at some other developed countries that are supposed to lead this fight, so to say, they are also trying to activate their coal mines. Some of them are doing that already. So now asking Nigeria to now step down its production of crude oil, maybe for me, insensitive, so to say. So how do you begin to advise government to find a way to imbibe the idea around low carbon innovation while other people are actually, you know, going ahead to pollute the environment the more? Thank you.
Okay, can I answer now? Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Please go ahead, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
thank you so much. I mean, may I sort of interest you to say that I am also an oil and gas lawyer. I mean, that's my area. If you Google my name, you will see that I've done a lot of research, a lot of work, a lot of transaction in oil and gas. But I'm also an environmental person. So you just have to have a balance. There is nothing stopping Nigeria from exploiting their oil and gas. But then you have sustainable pathways to do that. For instance, the carbon that is being emitted, what is stopping them from having a carbon sequestration device? And the thing is, those sort of devices are available. You can get them simply by applying to this fund. There was one time we had one in Kwale. So we had a carbon sequestration device given to Kwale under the CDF program. So under the Kyoto Protocol, which preceded the Paris Agreement, we had mechanisms that allowed developed countries to achieve their targets by, you know, developing low carbon projects in Africa. And so that project applied and they got a carbon sequestration device. We could actually use that to reduce our mitigation in the oil and gas sector. The reality is oil is still the mainstay of Nigerians' economy, and it's not going to change for a long while. But that's not to say that we cannot take steps to reduce our emission level in that sector. And then again, there are certain areas in Nigeria, like the electricity sector, for instance. We have poor access to electricity. Now, the lack of access to electricity in Nigeria provides the opportunity to simply use low carbon. So instead of taking ourselves backwards to what is not working by looking at maybe like gas electricity technology or gas electricity, we should go decentralization. We should use off-grid renewable electricity, which is even cost competitive now. So for instance, there is nothing stopping us from promoting the use of solar photovoltaic and some other renewable electricity device, because I mean, they are now everywhere in Nigeria. And from an economic point of view, it seems to be the right thing to do. So that is my response. I will still summarize it. Number one, nobody is saying don't use oil and gas, but then the reality is in the course of our exploitation, we should use the sustainable pathways. So we shouldn't go ahead and exploit it in a manner that will be really damaging to the environment. Number two, sectors like the electricity sector, where you have low access to electricity, we could, because they are cost competitive and they are even better. Part of the problem we are having in Nigeria, the electricity problem, is because the national grid is not suitable for a country like Nigeria. One, you have the security situation, whereby somebody who is aggrieved with the government can just go and, spoil a transformer, and then there goes the electricity for most parts of Nigeria. Or where maybe there is an accident and a major transmission line was hit, then a major part of the country is cut off from electricity. Whereas if you are using decentralized renewable electricity, you won't have the same problem. Communities can come together, partner with government, or even with a telecommunication company like MTN, have renewable electricity technologies and use it. You could even have hybrid systems whereby areas with poor access will be supported by renewable electricity, rather than insisting that, we must keep on using conventional energy, whether it's working or not, because A and B, they are using conventional energy. Meanwhile, it is even a mismatch for us as a country. So I hope I've been able to address your queries, sir. Mr. Nelson, can you hear me?
Hello, Nelson. Okay. Hello, Nelson, please unmute yourself and ask a question. Hello. Okay, because of our time, we'll go to the last question for today. I think Nelson can actually drop his question on the chat box. So, Dr. Adeshola Ikudaisi, please ask your question briefly. Thank you. Hello, Adeshola Ikudaisi. Okay, I don't think she's still there. Okay, so let me just appreciate our facilitator today, that you have really done a great justice. In fact, you really opened my eyes to my eyes of understanding to so many things on the Climate Act that has been signed since 2021. And during this session, I was like, this act has been signed 2021, that's some years ago, and we are still on this. When are we actually going to ensure that the act is successful through our actions, through our mitigation and adaptation, even individually, our activities? Are they still not contributing to the climate greenhouse gas emission So those are the questions we actually need to ask ourselves, and to ensure that individual and we as a non-state actors, we should take actions with immediate effects. So you've really done a lot, and you've really explained a lot to us. And we hope to have you more, because this section was actually vast. And I'm sure that everyone on this platform has really gained a lot through your session. So once again, I want to say thank you for joining us. So before we leave, I will welcome Femi Ajayi to quickly run us through what we do in Opolo.
All right.
Femi Ajayi.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Good morning.
Yes, please go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So before I go ahead, I think Nathaniel Basi has dropped a message. I think he needs to drop because he can actually unmute. I don't know, probably the issue is coming from his end. He may wants to drop his question, so I think it's quite important to him. Dr. Nikki, I don't know if Basi can actually hear me. You might want to drop your message so we can actually call that out for you, because you can actually unmute yourself. Okay, thank you for that. Please drop your message on the chat box while we read your message.
Unknown persons to contribute.
So that's
Dr. Ole, we are sorry for that. Okay.
No problem at all.
Okay, so while we wait for Basi to drop his message, once again, I would like to appreciate Dr. Ngozi Chinua for taking our time to be on this platform. I also like to appreciate every person that have taken up time to attend this another edition of the Research Enterprise webinar series. So for the benefit of those that are just joining for the first time, Opolo aims to help entrepreneurs, that is to turn ideas into successful business by providing them with resources, support, mentorship that they need to drive, as well as researchers, because we don't only just support entrepreneurs. That is why we decided we actually have a unit called RISE. So these are units that will be able to support the research work that has been done by researchers. So once again, Opolo offers a springboard for innovators to succeed. And we also offer a unique blend of services that can help, that can be tailored, right, to each of our stakeholders. I mean, to those that we are offering solutions to, be the entrepreneurs, the researchers, even talents, even young persons. And so we have some key features of our programs, and we offer services around research to innovation commercialization. We offer capacity building programs, not just tech programs, research programs, climate change, fintech, health, creative industries. So many important initiatives that support innovation, right? We also come in the area of startup funding. We also offer mentorship and coaching, because for us, after our trainings, we don't just end there. We need to ensure that we are coaching them and we actually serve as mentors to our mentees. So aside that, we also offer idea incubation and acceleration. We take from the incubation stage to also the acceleration stage. So incubation and accelerator program is very unique because we focus on individual needs and goals for each entrepreneur's researchers to actually thrive. So in summary, Opolo is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs succeed by providing them with resources, support, like I earlier mentioned. So you can do well to check our website, www.opolo.global, where we can have access to most of our information. And you can also reach out to us by checking our contact page. If you have any possible initiative that you might want us to support you with, you could always reach out. So thank you once again, the moderator, Dr. Nike, and Dr. Ngozi Chinua. Thank you once again.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, Femi Ajayi. So, and we really appreciate that. Nelson Bassey has actually dropped his question for us, and it reads that I quickly want to, that he appreciates this program, and he wants to He said, but how could many more be brought into this platform? And when next is the program? I'm going to answer that. And I wish to ask about the involvement of schools. I'm a teacher in secondary school. So, okay. For us at Okpolo, we're having climate literacy program, and it's meant to commence as soon as possible, in which we are going to educate students of secondary schools, tertiary institutions on how to, for better understanding on climate literacy. Then this program is a monthly program, and it goes, the next edition will actually goes on. And if you actually want a partner, if you want to partner with us on this climate literacy, Okpolo is actually available. And they want to say that we have started with going to some schools to actually educate their students. We have written letters and we have started that initiative already. So if you want your school to actually partake from this, you can reach out to us. I'm going to drop my email address on the chat box soon. So I don't know if Dr. Ngozi, Dr. Ngozi Chinwe will actually want to respond to that too.
Thank you so much. Coincidentally, I'm also the National Organizing Secretary of the Association of Environmental Lawyers of Nigeria. We are also working to see that we have the establishment of what we call green clubs in secondary school. So those are like environmental related clubs that would, help the increased awareness of environmental issues such as climate change. Probably we should also write to your organization to see whether we could partner for the fast acceleration of the club and dissemination as well, so that we can have a lot of green clubs in secondary school. And maybe with time, it could also form part of the secondary school curriculum to sort of have this, and as part of the secondary school curriculum and part of what a student must pass through before they leave secondary school. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. So I want to say we are open to partnership on this, not only on climate literacy too. We're having another program that is coming up on our accelerator program, and that is for climate solutions providers. So as this, from your mail, we'll be sending out some of this details information. And if you want to reach out to us, I've put email that you can actually reach out to. So once again, thank you, everyone. And as soon as possible, we'll be coming up with another webinar session of climate change of Okpolo Initiative. So thank you very much.
All right. Sorry, Dr. Ngozi, please, before you go, we would like to take a picture with you. I would urge everyone to turn on their camera so we can take captions. Please, if you can hear us, please turn on your camera so we can take a group photograph. Yes, I'm doing something too. All right, thank you. Sadiq, we're also expecting you to put on your camera. All right, thank you. Dr. Agatha, we also expect you to do the same. Additional, I see. Thank you. Thank you. Also do well to follow us on our media platforms to appreciate the guest speaker and also to drop your 2 cents. Okay, yeah, Adifemi, we also expecting you to turn up your camera so we can take a picture with you. Let's see your face. Thank you. All right, thank you so much. I think Dr. must have taken those pictures. We really appreciate you and also look forward to having you in our next editions of our Research to Enterprise webinar series. I'd also do well to check more info on our media platform where we'll be having a spotlight series. Of course, this spotlight series is actually for everyone. Secure how to access funding, securing the right funding is very applicable to everyone. So we urge everyone to also take a watch and eye on our media platform and get updates on our next spotlight series. So once again, thank you so much, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ngozi. We just believe that we'll be having in our next editions for probably different topics. I hope you'll be available to accept our invites.
Thank
All
you.
right, yeah, thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
All right, bye. Have a wonderful day. Thank
too.
you.